Okay, this one is called jurisdiction. Challenge it. They don't have jurisdiction, and you don't have to give them jurisdiction, let me put it that way. They like to play their games. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I mean a lawyer. Well, that means a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I've provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to ideas. Now, some of these sites are actually summaries of what the case says. I try to leave the brackets off, the quotation marks off, if it's a summary. But sometimes there's, you know, a case will say something over 2 or 3 pages, which is more than just a snippet. And so you have to kind of summarize that, what they're saying. And so some people get on my case, well, I can't find that. Well, that's because it's a summary. Read the case. Anyways. There's 4 types of people you will meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. So which one are you? Do you really know for sure? If you can see through the illusion, then you're part of the solution. If the people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? And that is so true. I see, like, again, like I was saying yesterday, there's people that I help either get out of jail or stay out of jail because I start pointing out defects in these malicious prosecutions is what they are. And we're going to go through what a malicious prosecution is. And we'll learn about that today. Matter of fact, in Nelson's case, I would call that a malicious prosecution.
You saw me get my pen out.
And so you can go after that prosecutor for sure. It's a malicious prosecution.
The trustees.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Well, so it's not a court. Therefore, never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the pigs. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. And not all, I want to say, peace officers are bad. Okay, actually, when they're keeping the peace, that's what we need them to do. And so, but this is for Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. We need to win them over. Okay, there's a lot of them that are. That really do want to do the right thing, and so we need to win them over, and we need to win over their bosses. And it says here, we can join the people in public service to establish key relationships which build critical foundations in restoring America, and that's true, okay? One thing I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, is that when the Soviet Union broke up, what happened was, it was basically what I saw to be the final death knell for the Soviet Union. You see, you know, they can sit there and create fictitious money forever, okay? People say that the government is going to go bankrupt because there was a video we were watching the day before yesterday, if you remember, where they talked about how the government is barely able to come up with interest to pay the debt. Well, they can, Japan, the Central Bank of Japan has been buying the bonds for Japan for years. Matter of fact, they say that Japan now owns something like 70% of the stock market. I should say that the central bank owns 70% of the stock market because they don't want it to crash, and so the central bank buys all of that stuff up too. And so they can sit there and fabricate money out of nothing forever. And whether the government pays the interest on the debt is immaterial. You know, so they're just nothing but a bunch of thieves. So we need to, at the end of the day, somebody has to be their order follower, and if the order followers refuse to follow orders, then we win. And that's what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed, because people were going across that demilitarized zone, which is the wall in Berlin that was separating East Berlin from West Berlin, and there was a no man's land there, and every once in a while somebody from East Germany would run across that wall and they'd get machine gunned. And what happened was, eventually, the people in East Germany, the order followers just refused to machine gun them. They just refused to murder these people because they were fleeing East Germany. And so then what happened is one or two turned into a flood. There was millions of people that started going across, and then they just started tearing the wall down. And that was the end of the Soviet Union. And so that's what we need to do, is convince these people of what their real duty is. And now again, some people like being slaves, so that's fine. Knock yourself out. Be a slave if you want. But not all of us want to be a slave. So a jurisdiction where a court failed to observe safeguards, it amounts to a denial of due process of law, and the court is deprived of juris. Okay, that's subject matter jurisdiction. When they deny due process, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. So really, challenging in personam jurisdiction is a diversion. Okay, so you don't challenge in personam jurisdiction. You know, you can sit there and say I'm not a corporation and all that stuff. You're essentially challenging in personam jurisdiction, but really the real solution is to challenge the subject matter jurisdiction, because they're denying due process, and you got to recognize when they deny due process. They do it all the time. It's like they can't do anything without denying due process, but I think also they do it on purpose, because then what happens is you consented. You're supposed to know the law, and you consented by letting us deny you due process. And so, you know, again, we have to understand when they're denying due process. Not every action by any judge is an exercise of his judicial function. It is not a judicial function for a judge to commit an intentional tort, even though the tort occurs in the courthouse. When a judge acts as a trespasser of the law, when a judge does not follow the law, when the judge loses subject matter jurisdiction, and the judge's orders are void and of no legal force or effect. Okay, so again, if he's masquerading, if he's a military commissioner, then he's not a judge. Okay, and so it's a denial of due process right off the bat. Okay, because he's not neutral or unbiased. I mean, there's all sorts of things. When they deny due process, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction can be challenged at any time, even on appeal. You can challenge subject matter jurisdiction on appeal. And the reason is because it's a void judgment. Watch my video about void judgments. Once jurisdiction is challenged, everything stops until jurisdiction is proven. Defense of lack of subject matter jurisdiction over the subject matter may be raised at any time, even on appeal. Jurisdiction can be challenged at any time, and jurisdiction, once challenged, cannot be assumed and must be decided. Once challenged, jurisdiction cannot be assumed, it must be proved to exist. However late this objection to jurisdiction has been made or may be made in any cause, in an inferior or appellate court of the United States, it must be considered and decided before any court can move one further step in the cause, as any movements is necessarily the exercise of jurisdiction. That's U.S. Supreme Court. Where jurisdiction is contested, the burden of establishing it rests upon the plaintiff. The burden of proving jurisdiction rests upon the party asserting it. So that means the prosecutor. He has to prove jurisdiction. The judge cannot decide jurisdiction. The burden is on the prosecutor to prove jurisdiction. The court cannot give itself jurisdiction. Proceeding without jurisdiction is not something that is considered discretionary. It's not discretionary for them to do that. There's a lot of things that are discretionary, but that is not one of them. A universal principle as old as the law is that the proceeding of a court without jurisdiction are a nullity, and its judgments therein are without effect either on person or property. So that's really the judgment, or these habeas corpuses that I do for people and to get them out of jail, is it's a void judgment. Okay, and on top of that, it's not discretionary for the court to deny the habeas corpus when it is a void judgment. And so actually, this friend of mine that I'm trying to currently working on getting him out of jail, the guy that was practicing medicine without a license, or claimed that he was practicing medicine allegedly. Anyways, the judge dismissed, or at least the word we got. We haven't got somebody called up to court, and the clerk told that somebody that the case had been dismissed for failing to exhaust his state remedies, and I don't think that's a valid reason, and so we could appeal it. But the problem is that once you appeal it, the decision for the Texas Supreme Court will come down anyway, so it'll be a moot discussion. But that's what I'm going to tell that guy, is we can appeal that decision. But let's wait until we get it in writing. They haven't even given us anything. This is all hearsay at this point. You see what I'm saying? So, anyways, let's keep going. A departure by a court from those recognized and established requirements of law, however close apparent adherence to mere form in the methods of procedure, which has the effect of depriving one of a constitutional right, is an excess of jurisdiction. You need to understand when they're denying due process, okay? And when the judge, when you ask a question and the judge answers it instead of the prosecutor, the judge is working for the prosecutor. That's a denial of due process by definition, okay? The judge has got nothing to say. He's supposed to be sitting there playing stupid at worst, and at best he should be honoring his oath and protecting your rights. But they're not interested in that. They're nothing but a bunch of bought and paid for whores. Don't get me going. You're going to get me going. The burden shifts to the court to prove jurisdiction. A court has no jurisdiction to determine its own jurisdiction. For a basic issue in any case before a tribunal is its power to act, and a court must have the authority to decide that question in the first instance. So they don't have authority to say, oh, we got jurisdiction. Bull. A court cannot confer jurisdiction where none existed, and cannot make a void proceeding valid. It is clear and well-established law that a void order can be challenged in any court. It's collateral. You can go after them collaterally, which means you can file a separate lawsuit. You can do anything you want. It's a nullity. Thus, where a judicial tribunal has no jurisdiction of the subject matter on which it assumes to act, its proceedings are absolutely void in the fullest sense of the term. It didn't exist. It is nothing.
Ab initio.
Right. Judge loses his absolute immunity from damage actions only when he acts in clear absence of all jurisdiction or performance of an act which is not judicial in nature. Okay, so we're coming after you, Judge. Are you ready for that? Of course, you're going to have to get his bar member buddies to go along with it, and that's what he's banking on. There is no discretion to ignore that lack of jurisdiction. The law requires proof of jurisdiction to appear on the record of the administrative agency and all administrative proceedings. Nelson was saying that in the New Jersey Constitution it says it's all administrative. Well, they still got to prove jurisdiction. Any way you want to look at it. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. And that's what you say, basically, or what I would say, is so you want to be a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. Is that correct? Turn it into a question. He can't find you in contempt for asking questions. Anyways, where there is no judge, there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshall Say It. Now that's a cite. That's a federal court. This Manning versus Ketchum is a federal court, but they're citing the U.S. Supreme Court in Bradley versus Fisher. That's a U.S. Supreme Court citation, and they are citing 10 Coke 68. That is Lord Coke in the writings, I think it's called the Commentaries on Littleton, which goes back to the 1500s. This is as old as time itself. If they don't have jurisdiction, they're nothing but a bunch of thieves and pirates. And it's up to you to know that's what's going on. That's why I don't go into those so-called courts. And that's why I just file criminal complaints against them. In arriving at our decision in this matter, we do not depart in any way from our holding in Hundling versus Jensen that the doctrine of judicial immunity extends to courts of limited jurisdiction. But when a minor magistrate acts wholly without jurisdiction, civil liability attaches for his malicious and corrupt abuse of process, and his willful and malicious oppression of any person under the pretense of acting in his official capacity. It's malicious is what it is. That's exactly what it is. If they don't have probable cause, it's a malicious prosecution. Lack of jurisdiction equals a void judgment. Proceeding without jurisdiction is a malicious prosecution. So we're doing a malicious prosecution, are we here? See the void judgments video. If you tell you they have jurisdiction without proving jurisdiction, it's a war crime. So we're doing war crimes here today, are we? And this under the Libre Code. Okay, so we go into that. And some of this stuff is slides from other presentations that have no doubt about it. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Texas is under a military occupation. I believe that everywhere in America is under a military occupation, but the question is how do you prove it? I can prove it in Texas for sure, any of the southern states. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or consequence. The presence of the hostile army proclaims its martial law. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief. There's been no proclamations ending martial law anywhere that I've seen. Or by special mention in a treaty of peace. And I've read a lot of treaties of peace, and none of them say anything about the martial law ending. And you know, if you think about it, that's why they want martial law. They want this military dictatorship going on because that's their agenda to end slavery. Okay, because it's all coming from the Roman cult is where it's coming from. Anyways, that's Article 2 of the Libre Code. All Civil War states are under military occupation. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky. All of the states in the territory conquered in the war with Mexico are under military occupation, and that's Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Nevada. Dictation equals dictatorship, okay, which is military dictatorship, and they even talk about dictation in the Libre Code. Law enforcement means they're enforcing the martial law. That's why they call them law enforcement officers, because they're enforcing the martial law. When the southern states walked out of Congress in 1861, they ceased to have a quorum. Under executive authority, Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene. When the Supreme Court ruled against something Lincoln did, he ordered troops to the Supreme Court. And even today, the Supreme Court, under Rule 45, it says all process of this court issues in the name of the President of the United States. Okay, so there's no separation of powers. It's all military dictatorship is what it is. Sooner we figure that out, the sooner we'll bring it to an end. But the people are so brain-dead idiots that they sit there, and that's why it continues for, what, 150 years. All statutes, state or federal, passed prior to 1861 are lawful de jure statutes. All statutes, state or federal, passed after 1861 are martial law statutes. That's why you see the pigs murdering everybody on TV. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. U.S. Supreme Court, 1901. In 1871, Congress set up a corporation to operate as the government of District of Columbia, and that's what's operating today. The tyrant who, in order to hold his power, suppresses every superiority, does away with good men, forbids education and life, controls every movement of the citizens, and keeping them under perpetual servitude, wants them to grow accustomed to baseness and cowardice, has his spies everywhere to listen to what is said in the meetings, and spreads dissension and calumny among the citizens, and impoverishes them, is obliged to make war in order to keep the subjects occupied and impose upon them a permanent need of a chief. Well, gee, that sounds like martial law. And that sounds like that's a perfect definition of Obama, for sure. And I don't think that Trump is doing that stuff, but certainly Obama did. It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March 9, 1933, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. To suspend the gold standard, let's go back. HDR 192, 73rd Congress. in session June 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. And that's from the U.S. Congressional Record, March 17, 1993. And notice, March 9, 1933. On that same day, since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. That's martial law. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. The majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule for 40 years. Freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And that's taken from U.S. Senate Report number 93-549, dated November 19, 1973. I've got a YouTube video about that report. Pentagon Inc., Google, YouTube, Facebook, Amazon masquerading as private companies, okay? CIA set up these companies, okay? Which Central Intelligence Agency. It's owned by the Roman cult. It's a private company.
Wasn't Zuckerberg grandson of one of the Rockefellers or something like that?
Sorry?
Zuckerberg.
Oh, Zuckerberg?
Yeah,
I've heard that. I've heard that he's tied in.
Yeah, he's like a grandson of the Rockefellers.
I've heard that he was tied into the CIA too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was involved with some program that the CIA was doing and then just rolled it over into Facebook.
Yeah, they just changed the name of it, right?
Martial law in a hostile country consists in suspension by the occupying military authority of the criminal and civil law and of the domestic administration and government of the occupied place or territory, and in the substitution of military rule and force for the same, as well as in the dictation of general laws. All statutes, codes, rules, and regulations are edicts under martial law. As far as military necessity requires this suspension, substitution, and dictation. Okay, so it's the law of necessity. The law of emergency is martial law. And that's why you see martial law here, okay, because the federal government's bankrupt and all these code enforcers are U.S. citizens, and so it's the law of emergency. And so all police, that's what brings the Libre Code into New Jersey and all of the rest of the states. The commander of the forces may proclaim the administration of all civil and penal law shall continue either wholly or in part, as in times of peace, unless otherwise ordered by the military authority. The last thing they want you to do is figure out that everything's under martial law, okay? They will, that's why they sit there and say you have constitutional rights and all this other crap. And because they want you to think you have constitutional rights, because they don't want you knowing that this is a military dictatorship. Technically, it's not. But you see it happening every day. I mean, technically, and we're going to talk about it, and we'll get into that, okay? But the military martial law only affects subjects and aliens. It doesn't affect if you're not a subject, and a subject is something that's created by the government. Anyways, military necessity, as understood by modern civilized nations, consists of the necessity of measures which are indispensable for securing the ends of the war, and which are lawful according to the modern law and usages of war. That's Article 14 of the Libre Code, talking about military necessity, okay? Martial law is the law of necessity and emergency. Military necessity does not admit of cruelty, that is, the infliction of suffering for the sake of suffering or for revenge, nor of maiming or wounding except in fight, nor of torture to extort confessions. It does not admit of the use of poison in any way, nor of wanton devastation of a district. It admits of deception, but disclaims acts of perfidy, and in general, military necessity does not include any act of hostility which makes the return to peace unnecessarily difficult. So, martial law, okay?
Somehow this doesn't apply to CIA.
Well, it admits to deception, right? And the CIA they're owned by the Roman cult. They wanna exterminate as many people as possible. Okay, again, Central Intelligence Agency is the operative word. I used to work for U.S. Airways. Actually, I started out working for America West Airlines, and then they merged with U.S. Airways. But I got to tell you that I've seen their air agency certificate. Okay, so America West Airlines and U.S. Airways and even American Airlines now, they're all agencies of the Department of Transportation. Okay, and they have an air agency certificate. And so any agency is a private corporation that's owned by somebody, and they have a contract, or they subject to, in the case of the airlines, they just they don't have a contract with. They might have a contract, but they do have a contract because they're subject to the regulations. Okay, as an agency. So the same thing with the National Security Agency or the Central Intelligence Agency. Those are private companies that have a contract to do things for the government. And so they say that the real headquarters for the Central Intelligence Agency is in Switzerland. So think about it. Somebody, they're collecting all this information. Yeah, they give it to us, but what else are they doing with it? That's why these false flag operations are going on. What do you think happened in New Zealand here recently? That was the CIA, I guarantee you. Martial law extends to property and to persons, whether they are subjects of the enemy or aliens to that government. Doesn't say anything about if you're not a subject. Subjects are aliens and nobody else. Does not affect we the people. Why would anyone want to be a low-life scumbag U.S. citizen slave? That's why they want to assault you with that slave so they can fabricate evidence of their slave. If a military police officer is talking to you, then you're subject and you are the enemy.
Were you talking about the mosque shooting in New Zealand?
Yeah.
I have a video on my phone. There was planted magazines in that church. I'll show it to you later.
That's why I say, I've heard about that stuff. They banned that stuff.
That's why I saved it.
Yeah, no doubt. But so the thing is that that's why they banned that stuff. They don't want people finding out about the fact that it was a false flag operation.
If you go back,
You see him looking for a magazine with a flashlight,
almost
and then he
all
finds the
that stuff
magazine
is
and walks
gone. You
past
can't
it.
find it.
Yeah, no doubt.
All the pictures that showed that there was no blood or anything,
Right, that's
all
right.
gone, all gone.
No doubt.
Now the
Yeah,
other
the
thing about
video-
New Zealand, does it
No,
make
my
any
video
sense that
ends right
soon
when he
after
walks
that
out.
they do a revenge in Sri Lanka?
Oh yeah.
What happened in New Zealand? What's that got to do with it? It's, I mean, it's so full of shit.
Yeah, it's all part of their agenda. They want to start World War III.
So you
They want to kill off a bunch of people. Okay, they want to reduce the population. That's the Roman cult's agenda. There's too many people here. They're losing control. Really, if you read between the lines, what they're saying is we're losing control. With the New World Order crowd is losing control, and we got to kill off a bunch of people so that we can get control back. That's exactly what they're saying. This is McCullough versus Maryland, a U.S. Supreme Court case, 1819. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extend are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. If you're not a subject, you're exempt. It means nothing to you. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the other property belonging to the United States. If you are a subject, you are a slave. That's what a slave is. A slave is property. If you're subject to the regulations, you are a slave. You are the enemy. The same thing in Canada. The same thing in every country. This is a fundamental principle of law. This is what I talk about as fundamental principles of law. And so they sit there and say, well, statutes have overridden that. Well, BS. These are fundamental principles of law and they apply everywhere. Owned means subject to the regulation. And that's the Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. So there's two jurisdictions. There's every tree has living things, people, animal, plant. That's the real world, God's. And then Lucifer's is the fictitious world, which is fictional things, persons, corporations, domicile, resident, legal, political. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. The term citizen of the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. So if the government creates it, then it's subject to them, right? That makes all the sense in the world. So they didn't create me, sorry. They know it too. And this is what trial is going to be talking about, is how to deal with that. If they're dragging you in their court, she's going to be talking about how to deal with that, some ideas on how to deal with that, and she's also going to be giving you ideas on different ways of doing it. Matter of fact, some of them, she says that you can actually get the money, but, you know, my attitude is I want nothing to do with that
the
thing.
devil.
Yeah. Anyway, civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens, not state citizens. Federal citizens, as parents, have no right to the custody of their infant children. It's subject to the paramount right of the state. They're stealing your children. If they're doing anything to you, you're a slave. You're a subject. Uh-huh. Okay. That's fine. It is evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community in which is vested any sovereign power of the government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States, but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but the political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. So, any laws they make are for them. Has nothing to do with we the people. There's nothing, there's court cases that talk about it. There's nothing the government can do to affect the people. So they make laws that's for them. Martial law affects chiefly the police and collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. That's why they're so worried about your safety. They want you to be safe. And isn't it, I think it was Jefferson that said that the people have to, the only thing the people really have to worry about is the government that becomes imposes some sort of dictatorship on them for their safety. Anyways, I don't know.
It's like the Patriot Act. Like, that was one
Well,
of the
yeah.
9/11 was
Oh, that's
strip your freedoms away.
Yeah, you got that right.
Pretty.
Contract. Do you feel like you have no constitutional rights when it comes to income taxes? Because you don't. All police are military police, FBI military police, city military police, state military police, Homeland Security military police, county military police. All police are military police, and if they're talking to you, then you are a subject, and you are the enemy. The real domestic terrorists. You are the enemy. You are the enemy. How many people have they murdered? It seems like every night on television almost they talk about somebody that got murdered by the police.
A cop got murdered last night.
A cop did?
Yeah. On a traffic stop.
Well,
Where?
It was, I think it was Jersey, but I'm not sure. It was nearby.
yeah, so there'll be martial law going on around there. And there'll be another excuse to go after sovereign citizens, you know. It's you know, they're cowards. They only operate in packs. And so now they'll start operating in packs. Anyways, don't get me going. You're going to get me going. We talked it over, and after investigating it ourselves, we decided we're not guilty. See, if it was a traffic stop, it wasn't a breach of the peace then, was it? It's commercial. He was operating in his private capacity as a revenue officer. You know, I don't know what went on, but I would question, you know, the legitimacy of what he was doing.
Well, killing anyone is not good unless it's self-defense, but still.
Well, I agree. I agree. I would
they're-
never encourage, you know, again, they hold two positions. They're peace officers and they're law enforcement officers. If he was keeping the peace, then we should come out in his defense, you know. But if it was a traffic stop, I'm not sure that there was a breach of the peace. But I don't think he deserved to die for what he did. You know, but the problem is these whores in the courts and everything else, you know. I mean, so I can certainly understand what might have gone on. I mean, I can't possibly guess at what happened or anything like that. But I've been stopped enough by these pigs to know what it's like to be on the other end of that.
When they escalate things and get
Well,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have guns. They're threatening you, and they're doing all sorts of stuff. It's war crimes. Beware violent street gangs. A typical gang member, well organized, gang colors, gang identifier, heavily armed. Do not approach gang members, are aggressive and notoriously violent. Article 13 of the Libre Code. Military jurisdictions of two kinds. First, that which is confirmed and defined by statute. Second, that which is derived from the common law of war. Military offenses under that statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed, but military offenses which do not come within the statute must be tried and punished under the common law of war. Think about it. All offenses are military. That's what they're saying here. Military offenses that fall under the statutes, military offenses that fall under statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed. They're all military offenses.
One of the things that caught my attention that got me studying all this stuff was I heard someone say that you're not part of the military. You're not even supposed to be in that courtroom. You know, like that. That's what perked
Really?
my attention of
That's
all
a
this
government.
stuff.
That's really the only people that belong in there are government employees.
Because it's a military tribunal. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
And then that's what really got me
Right.
like,
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
So
That's why I don't go in there. And you know, I file criminal complaints against them, and I don't go in there. The character of the courts which exercise these jurisdictions depends upon the local laws of each particular country. In the armies of the United States, the first is exercised by court-martial, while cases which do not come within the rules and articles of war or the jurisdiction conferred by statute on court-martial are tried by military commissions. So it's all military. These are all military commissioners. Okay? And so, you know, you start pointing that out. I see you're a military commissioner. I see you got your military uniform on. You know, you start pointing that out and start talking about war crimes, and I'll bet you they're going to find a way to dismiss that case. They don't want that kind of stuff, especially if there's a bunch of people in there. You know, anyways, they try and get everybody out of there before they do you. All statutes are in support of the martial law. All statutes only apply to subjects. There are two kinds of court proceedings, court-martials and military commissions. And there's a military commission right there. The judge, the military commissioner, is on the left, and there's the prosecutor is really another military commissioner. They're sitting there debating about this is a military commission, and the police is one of their troops. And so the vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. And that's exactly what it is. It's martial law. Oh, look at that. There's a kangaroo court. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. And donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money, the military script, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Now, so this is, you saw me when we started, I saved this as a PDF file. I automatically do that for all the presentations, and I upload them to my Yahoo group in the files directory, so you can get them there. Now I know we're working on getting you access, and so we'll keep working on that here today, especially once trial is speaking, and then I can, you know, have more time to. You know, my attitude is there's no reason for you to buy this thing if we can't fix your problem.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we'll fix your problem, or else, you know, I mean, we'll have to. I don't know what we'll do. It's something to do with your. Well, it's Yahoo for one thing. Don't get me going. Anyways, and Microsoft, but the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Organization, and I want to stress that, you know, because these guys are wonderful guys, and so we need to understand that just because a cop stops us doesn't mean that he's the enemy, and so it's sad and disappointing that there was a cop shot and killed last night over a traffic stop. I certainly understand, you know, from being on the receiving end of that, but we need to educate them, and many of them, once they understand, will, you know, when you talk to them, they'll you know, basically walk away. You know, they'll say, "Have a nice day," and I know people that have had that happen to them. They say, "Have a nice day," you know, and that's the end of it. And so we need to get the sheriffs, you know, working on our behalf. And this is Sheriff Sam Page in North Carolina, our CSO. I'm not sure which county that is, but it's in North Carolina. I've learned more on constitutional law in one day here at this convention than I have in my 15 years as a sheriff. And so it's a pretty sad state of affairs that it took him. It was 15 years after he started as sheriff that he finally learned this stuff. But it's good that he did, and hopefully, I'm sure that the people in his county appreciate it. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's a lot of people there that appreciate it now, and so there's a lot of them that are good and honorable people, and this is a perfect example as well that they're reachable. Okay, we can reach them, and so just because they're stopping us, and even if they're giving us the ticket, doesn't mean that we can't win them over. Okay, we got to be persistent and hang in there, and that's why I like this Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, because then it won't be coming from me; it'll be coming from one of their peers, and and that's why I have those books, and I encourage law enforcement officers to get involved, because they need support as well, and the more it becomes, you get, all you really need is one peace officer in a department or a sheriff's office that is part of this and understands what the proper way to be done. He's going to be telling his buddies, and so then things will start affecting positively automatically, you know, and so it'll be positive for everybody.
So, getting into this jurisdiction, what's the process? You go into a court, and there, whatever situation is. I mean, how do we go about? What will we go about saying, and how do we go about initiating the process of challenging jurisdiction?
Well, I usually send them something up front, and a challenge to jurisdiction.
Before the court date, you send them a letter.
But chances are they're not even going to read it, because it's really not a court. That's why I don't go in there, quite frankly. But you have to understand that if you do go in there, you tell them that you're challenging jurisdiction, and they don't have the right to decide their jurisdiction, and they either have to dismiss it under. I would tell them again the federal rules. Okay, we're going to get there. We haven't got there yet, but there's a federal rule that says that when they lose subject matter jurisdiction, they have no choice but to dismiss the case. So you might have to tell them under your rule. You see what I'm saying? But what I would do is start pointing out that it's martial law, okay? Because if it's martial law, if he's wearing his bail priest uniform, his military uniform, then he's a military commissioner and he falls under the federal rules of civil procedure. They may say the federal rules don't apply here, but bull, because they do apply when he's under martial law and he's playing military commissioner. The federal rules do apply, and so you can.
Also, when they get federal funding.
Well, they do. Yeah, exactly. And so So that'd be another question. Do you get federal funding? You know what I mean? Are you a U.S. citizen? You know, and federal rules do apply. And martial law supersedes and replaces common law. And chances are, I think that is probably, like, I've challenged jurisdiction, but I haven't mentioned that federal rule. And I think and I think also that I make my challenges to jurisdiction way too long. I need to cut them down to where it just cuts to the chase to like a couple, 3 pages. You know what I mean? And you can. You just mention a few citations and tell them it's not discretionary, and pursuant to this federal rule, they have a duty to dismiss it. And so then they might read it. If they get something that's 20 or 30 pages or 50 pages, you know, they'll kind of flip through it, and you know, you see what I'm saying? So, anyways,
You notice on this here where they say common law, it's capitalized, and I've noticed that other places. And then in the Bill of Rights, when they talk about common law, it's lowercase. So they're definitely talking about something else here, that it's superseding something else, not the common law there of the people.
in this site,
Yeah, right there on the top.
The very first.
That's
well, that's
common law.
my stuff.
That's-
That's not a
that's-
site. That's
that's-
my
yeah.
stuff. I always
Oh,
capitalize
okay, I
it.
thought you copied that from
No,
somewhere.
no. The stuff in quotation marks is a site.
Okay.
Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, instead thereof the publishing or the use and exercise of the law martial. So the important thing that I want to point out here is that martial law supersedes common law, but that's only in the illusion. If you convene a common law jury and it's we the people, that's why trial is going to start showing you some stuff that what she does is she does a quick claim on the name. And she says that works pretty good. That's one of the things that she does. Okay, and so I like that idea. Do a quick claim on the name. You know, I quit claim here. I'm quit claiming this name. You know
It's
what I mean?
actually a combination of all names, if you can.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
But the point is, the name they're using. She also quit claims the. She just quit claims it all, and so you watch what she says, and she'll be able to explain it. But I like that idea. You know, I want nothing to do with it anyway. So stick it. You know, put it up your rectal orifice. You know. Anyways, to supersede the course of common law, instead thereof the publishing or the use and exercise of law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. That's military dictatorship, folks. And that's taken from the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, 1775. And notice the word necessity. So it's basically they're saying, okay, so if you're going to make on war on us, then we're going to respond. See what I'm saying? Anyways, there are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. So, again, it's only for subjects. Under Texas, non-law act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. All offenses are military offenses, right? At common law, this is Arizona, revised statutes. At common law, all common law offenses and affirmative defenses are abolished. This is more stuff in Arizona. The common law and these liars, you know, that's why I call them liars, quite frankly. They lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up as far as, you know. At the common law only so insofar as is consistent with and adapted to the natural and physical conditions of the state and the necessities of the people thereof, and not repugnant to or inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States or the constitutional laws of this state or established customs of the people in this state, is adopted. And shall be the rule of decision in all courts. National Security Agency takes care of the spying. Central Intelligence Agency takes care of the drug trade. If your Federal Bureau of Investigation takes care of the terror attacks and false flags. Homeland Security takes care of the rest. Central Intelligence Agency owns everyone of any significance in the major media. Is that a surprise? The media is bought and paid for. They can't tell the truth. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Ain't that a surprise? I mean, why is that a surprise? They don't tell the truth. They never did. And now it's being exposed because there's truth tellers on YouTube. Deception is a state of mind and the mind of the state. Again, that's CIA thieves. Government officials wear two hats. They can represent the unconstitutional corporation or they can represent the lawful de jure government. Because of our own ignorance, which is ignorance, according to Mark Passio, and I think he's right, we have given them evidence of their slave. They presume we're their slave until we defeat their presumption. Under international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during the war in his own name. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and on the other by mere private persons. The United States, this is Article 37 of the Libra Code, the United States acknowledge and protect in hostile countries occupied by them religion and morality, strictly private property, the persons of inhabitants, especially those of women, and the sacredness of domestic relations. Offenses to the contrary shall be rigorously punished. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans, okay? And the issue of the forced loans is what I want to talk about, but to billet soldiers, to appropriate property, especially houses, lands, boats, or ships and churches, for temporary and military uses. This is the U.S. Supreme Court, Juilliard versus Greenman. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They form a part of the public debt of the United States. And so the forced loans are vital forces, and it's legal tender notes are forced loans. That's what they're saying. And those Federal Reserve notes that you got in your wallet are forced loans, and they're vital forces. That's why, in my opinion, Trump is trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve, because they're absolutely vital part of the martial law. Federal Reserve notes and military script is military script. Federal Reserve notes is forced loans. They're forcing you, the enemy, to loan the government money. Governments, any sovereign, descend to the level of mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen where private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations or individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. Federal Reserve notes are military script. All statutes are national statutes. All statutes apply to subjects only. The military police often say, you think our laws don't apply to you? Well, the Libra Code says it all. So my answer to that is, do they even teach you guys to read? The last thing they want to talk about is war crimes, and war crimes precipitate revolutions. All empires are built the same way. You get 50% of the poor to go to war with the other and kill the other 50% of the poor, leaving the rich to chit-chat in the Senate, which gives the impression that there's real democracy. You absorb the land and riches of your enemies and repeat whenever you need cash or new resources. War is terrorism on a bigger budget. Democracy, fake laws, false arrest, feel free. This is Article 52 of the Geneva Convention. So again, the important thing to understand is you have to know when there's war crimes and when they're proceeding without jurisdiction. Okay, again, it comes down to war crimes. Really, is what it is, because when they proceed without jurisdiction, that's a war crime. Anyways, no contract or agreement or regulation shall impair the right of any worker, voluntary, whether voluntary or not, wherever he may be, to apply to the representatives of the protecting power in order to request this said power's intervention. So, when they charge you filing fees, when they hit you with their rules of procedure, I mean, all that stuff is for them. It's not for we the people. And so when they hit you with that stuff, this is telling you that they can't do that. It's a war crime. And then all measures aiming at creating unemployment or restricting the opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to deduce them for the work of the occupying power are prohibited. Well, if they're compelling a social security number, then they're coercing you to work for the occupying power. If they're They take their unemployment statistics, and I went and sent a criminal complaint recently, and I said I don't blame Trump for this because he inherited it, but the simple fact of the matter is your unemployment statistics are taken from government employees only, because it's calculated based on people that have Social Security numbers that are unemployed, and that's creating the restricting opportunities to people in the occupied territory to induce them to work for the occupying power. And this is Title 5, United States Code, Section 552 AA 13. The term federal personnel means individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government of the United States, including survivor benefits. It means anybody with a Social Security number is federal personnel. They compel the disclosure of a Social Security number. They're compelling you to work for the occupying power. Filing fees or regulation, court rules or regulation by turning on the emergency lights that are terrorizing you, another war crime. Coercing information from you or from a third party is a war crime. Facebook, Google, okay, they're trying to get information from you. It's none of their damn business. It's a war crime. I've filed criminal complaints against the banksters for compelling Social Security numbers, and then like within it was about 2 weeks after I sent it to the provost marshal. Within 2 weeks of me sending that to the provost marshal, they were advertising on the radio that you could buy a brand new Mitsubishi car with no Social Security number. I'm telling you, it's amazing how many times stuff like that happens. When they coerce the date of birth, they're compelling you to work for the occupying power, a war crime. When they use their regulations to deny you justice, it's a war crime. They're rules. It's regulations. This is Article 27 of the Geneva Convention. And I'm going to skip some of this because there's a bunch of it there that's not relevant to what I want to talk about. Protected persons are entitled in all circumstances to respect of their persons, their honor, their family rights, their religious convictions and practices, and their manners and customs. And then if you go down to paragraph 4, without prejudice to the provisions relating to their state of health, age, and sex, all protected persons shall be treated with the same consideration by the party to the conflict in whose power they are, without any adverse distinction based in particular on race, religion, or political opinion, okay? Well, when they start accusing you of being a sovereign citizen, that's a political opinion. So they're taking reprisals against you for your political opinion. When they stop you because you have plates in your vehicle that are not state plates, they're persecuting you for your political opinion. When they drag you into their kangaroo court, they're subjecting you to their satanic religious ceremony. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. There's the front page of my YouTube channel. The subscribe button's already checked because it's not red. The bell hasn't been clicked because it's not looking like it's vibrating. Article 2 of the Geneva Convention. The present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war of any other armed conflict which may arise. When that cop stops you, he's armed. Okay, so that's an armed conflict, if you think about it. And even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them, if you don't recognize it at the time, it doesn't matter. It's still an armed conflict. The convention also applies to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory. And when the Leo stops you with these emergency lights, he's armed. He's wearing a military uniform with military rank insignia. And it's an armed conflict, whether you recognize it or not. The fact that he stopped you and is proof that he's accusing you of being one of the slaves. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and on the other by mere private persons. The occupying power shall be bound for the duration of the occupation to the extent such power exercises the function of government in such territory by the following provisions of the following articles of the present convention, and there's probably about 40 of them there. But and that's Article 6 of the Geneva Convention. Article 44 of the Liber Code. All wanton violence committed against persons in the invaded country, all destruction of property not commanded by the authorized officer, all robbery, all pillage, all sacking, even after taking a place by main force, all rape, wounding, maiming, or killing of such inhabitants are prohibited under the penalty of death or such other severe punishment as may seem adequate for the gravity of the offense. a soldier, officer, or private in the act of committing such violence and disobeying a superior, ordering him to abstain from it, may be lawfully killed on the spot by such superior. And so that's where they get the good faith, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. Oh, I guess we don't. Collective penalties, likewise all measures of intimidation or terrorism. That's Article 33 of the Geneva Convention. Military uniforms are designed to be intimidating. The carrying of guns by their code enforcers is intimidating, especially if they have laws preventing you from owning guns. Okay, New Jersey is a good state for that. You can't have a gun, and yet this guy comes up to you and he's got a gun. Okay, that's extremely intimidating. You don't have the means to defend yourself against this pirate. And
I was kind of wondering, can somebody actually file a complaint directly against the governor for these laws that he's passing, anti-gun legislation and all that stuff?
He's allowed to pass
All
them
of
for
that
U.S.
is the
citizens.
slaves.
well, it all really just applies to the slaves.
Right, so he's allowed to do that. That's
So
how they get away
that's
with it.
and the Attorney General. What I would do is, and what I am doing, okay, is I serve, and it's one of my custom homemade. It's not a homemade. Well, it is, but it's my custom notice and demands that's specifically for Attorney Generals. Okay, because what I do is I call them, and I can show you. Matter of fact, I will show you one. There's a.
Oh yeah.
Texas. I'll show you one I sent to the Texas Attorney General.
Can we get a copy of
Yeah,
it?
I would love
I
that.
can email it to you if you'd like.
Okay.
Yes,
That'd be
please.
great.
Can't open it anyway.
You're more enslaved than all of us.
It says here,
Gotta get 'em
Ken
out.
Paxton, the private man as Texas attorney with the rank of general, subordinates and successors, equality in the law is paramount and mandatory by law as the highest law enforcement officer in Texas. Ken Paxton, paragraph 3, we'll go to 3. Ken Paxton, the private man as the Texas attorney with the rank of general, subordinates and successors. I didn't give you the authority to make a legal determination for me as the highest law enforcement officer of Texas. I think 11 is probably pretty good. It says, Ken Paxton, the private man as the Texas attorney with the rank of general. You'll notice that as the attorney with the rank of general, you're an officer of the military occupation in Texas, and as the highest law enforcement officer in Texas, all law enforcement officers in Texas are under your command and your subordinates, and you're responsible for their actions. And so what I do is I go through and I say that if they come and do something to me, then it's with your approval and consent, and it's what you intend. You intend that they violate my rights under the color of law. See what I'm saying? And so I go through the martial law and how I have a right not to be pillaged, not to have my property pillaged, and a right not to be subjected to threats, intimidation, terrorism against me in violation of Article 3 or to your military police coercing information from me or from third parties like the Texas Department of Public Safety hearsay database in violation of Article 31. And I have a right to a neutral and unbiased judge in any proceedings under your International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and also, which is also another war crime under Article 71, which is also found in the Libra Code. And since I am neither a subject nor an alien, I have a right not to be subjected to a military commission or a court-martial, and you and your subordinates may not personally profit. Actually, I further down, I think, I go into stuff and I say, if let's see here, let's see, there's one of them, how about this?
Is there like a 2-page version of that?
This is 33 pages. Anyways, this is
You can do
paragraph
it. You can do
15.
it.
This is paragraph 15. You, Ken Paxton, the private man acting as Texas attorney with the rank of general, subordinate successors, as the highest law enforcement officer in Texas, are noticed that pursuant to your edict under martial law, Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 52, an allegation that a corporation is incorporated shall be taken as true unless denied by the affidavit of the adverse party, his agent or attorney, whether such corporation is public, private corporation, however created, which is really a reaffirmation of what the courts have said. Failure of any adverse party to deny under oath the allegation that the party is a corporation when a complaint dispenses with the necessity of proof of that fact, or when a complaint is lodged by the government for a fine, fee, tax, all of which are revenue that are imposed only on corporations. And I am not a U.S. citizen, 14th Amendment citizen, corporation, or other fictitious entity is found in this corporate denial, which is affidavit, which is recorded with the Pinal County Recorder as evidenced by the true copy of another affidavit, which is attached here to, all of which are incorporated herein by reference in their entirety. And if you or your subordinates or successors attempt to compel me to appear or make a plea, if the respondent is not a corporation, he cannot appear and plea. It shall be evidence of the intent of you and your subordinates to engage in all the crimes described herein. Okay, so I'm basically laying a foundation so I can file a criminal complaint against them for all sorts of stuff. You see what I'm saying? And because I sent this to him, and he went, his subordinates did it anyway, so he intended to engage in a seditious conspiracy. He intended to violate my rights under the color of law. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm laying that foundation. So if you want this, I mean, you have to personalize it for yourself anyways, but I'll be glad to email this to you.
Yeah, I'd like to send, I'd like to, yeah. Yes.
Why don't I do that while I'm thinking about it right now?
Maybe someday I'll be able to open it, you know?
So what you do is as I'm going to email it right now, and so you're going to have to, well, I may not even, this profile may not have all your email addresses, so you'll have to, maybe we ought to cut this out.
You can post it on the Yahoo group.
Yeah, just send it, they won't know why it was sent.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
just go to
Well,
the Yahoo group.
I can
It'll
post
have
it.
It'll have the explanation of what it is.
I can post it to the Yahoo group.
Yeah. I mean, the WhatsApp group.
Well, I don't have WhatsApp linked on here right now.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I got to use the restroom real quick, so I'll be right back. It's one thing about that tea in one ear and out the other.
It's a lot of caffeine, you get kidney stones from that stuff, right?
You left it out. There's space right here.
Okay. Sorry. You're stuck in all.
So now, who do you send these notice of commands to? What's the purpose of,
Well, you're-
obviously putting them on notice that,
Right.
that they're violating?
He's building a case, basically. He's telling,
He's putting them on warning.
You can't say I didn't know if you noticed it.
So basically, don't screw with me because I'm gonna come after you and these are the laws that I have to come after you. So drop
Right,
it.
you're showing them,
Either-
look, I know what I'm talking about,
either
if you
drop
mess with
it
me, it's
or-
gonna be a problem, so maybe you should tell your guys that when they see me, that they should go the other way. That's the idea, and there's letters that there's like 2 letters, 2 senators at 2 different times, 2
That's it,
different
no, that's it,
states,
they already signed up. Just close it back.
that,
Everybody else did?
that wrote, that sent letters to their law enforcement that there were, one of them specifically says, Glenn's got it, and they say that there are people that have canceled their contracts with the state.
Oh, it's done.
Right.
It's done in your gun.
They canceled the contracts with the state, and that they want to make sure that there's no bad interactions with you. That he wants to educate the police officers. He wants to make sure that they're all educated on how to deal with somebody who's basically a free man.
yeah, no contract.
Right, with no contracts and stuff, that they don't have to carry licenses. He says it all in the letter to him, and he's talking to the police chief. He's telling the police
How do I
precinct.
sign up for that? Oh, wait, let me hear.
It was in the '80s too. It wasn't like it was really that long. I guess it was that long ago now, but you know,
It wasn't like it was in the 50s or the 1920s or something.
Okay.
Wondering if you get a couple of copies of that and send it to your senator and go, I'm canceling my contracts now. You might want to do the same thing so there isn't a problem. There's obviously been a precedent set.
Okay, so let's keep going here. If the pig yells at you because you're not cooperating, it's threatening and intimidating. Their uniforms and vehicle colors and paint scheme are designed to be threatening and intimidating. The black and white doors, they know exactly what they're doing. And I've even had them tell me that this all designed, it's calculated, they know exactly what they're doing. No protected person may be punished for an offense he or she has not personally committed. Collective penalties and likewise all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. Pillage is prohibited. Reprisals against protected persons and their property are prohibited. So if they seize your property, it's pillaging and reprisals. If they call you a sovereign citizen, they're taking reprisals against you for your political beliefs. If you don't, because you don't want to be your slave too. That's at the bottom. I have exclusive videos available on my website. It's Sovereignty International. I have 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only, and $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. Now, there is a, even though it's unlimited consultations, there's a limit as to what I can do as far as the consultations are concerned, because I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in a lawyer. Well, that's a liar. And so, but I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit. But I can't fight all the battles. I need other people being on point and bringing up the right issues. I'm currently publishing a video a month, and some of my exclusive content is the Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Exposure, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration Training, Criminal Complaint Training. I've got several videos up there. I think there's 3 of them, and there's probably going to be more. I've also got, I don't have any lawsuit training ones, although I could put some up pretty easily that are nice and generic, because in any lawsuit you have to do certain things. And then other training requests. Some of the videos from this Northeast Private Information Share are going to be in the exclusive videos, and some of them will be on YouTube. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free on my 2 private groups, the Yahoo groups and Google groups. All exclusive content will be on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. You are the property of Rome. This is all coming from the Roman cult. The Social Security number is a number issued by the International Monetary Fund, which is owned and operated by the Roman cult. And they do everything they can to deceive you of that fact. This is Braswell versus United States, but individuals, when acting as representatives of a collective group, cannot be said to exercising their personal rights and duties, nor be entitled to their purely personal privileges. Rather, they assume the rights, duties, and privileges of the artificial entity or association of which they're agents or officers, and they're bound by its obligations. That's why I like what Trial does, because she quit claims, her interest in the Roman cult Sestake Trust. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they're driven out of all their former holes, they devise a new method of conveyance by which the lands are granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fees to the use of the religious houses. Thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in the nominal fee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks, to be bound in conscience to account to assess the use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Assumpsit. these liars lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. Assumpsit, in its origin and action of tort, assumpsit was soon transformed into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract, based at first only upon an express promise. It was afterwards supported upon an implied promise and even upon a fictitious promise. Yeah, they sit there and lay awake at night with this stuff. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt, became concurrent with account. See, these are all commercial terms. Debt account with case upon a bailment, warranty, bills of exchange, and competed with equity in the case of essentially equitable quasi-contracts. Okay, so you're in a court of equity. When you're a traffic court, that's a court of equity. Growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment. So they assault you with their Roman cult sesticate trust, so then they can assault you with one of their so-called contracts. Both in Roman and English law, there are certain obligations which were not in truth contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They are contractual in law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. That's why they got to impose martial law, okay? Because then that judge, he doesn't have a duty to you. It's a military dictatorship, okay? He's just sitting there playing stupid. And so that prosecutor goes in there and he's a liar. He's laid awake at night dreaming this stuff up. And they're going to play these little legal games and assault you with one of their so-called contracts to extort some money under their martial law. That's why they got to do martial law, I'm telling you. If it wasn't for the martial law, none of this stuff would be happening. Constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon a legal fiction or fiction of law. It's well-settled rule of law that he who seeks benefits of contract must assume the burdens. Voluntary acceptance of benefit of transaction is equivalent to consent to all obligations arising from it so far as facts are known or ought to be known by the person accepting. So they sell you into slavery. That's exactly what anybody in jail has been enslaved, as in slavery. And they sell you into slavery is what they do. At common law, under the Bible, they should be put to death. Okay, that's why they got to do martial law again, because at common law they would be put to death. Okay, so they got to get rid of that nasty little common law problem. Why do you think they want a Social Security number when you apply for a driver's license or unemployment insurance or a passport or any other benefit? All they need is a date of birth to pull up their quasi-contract or their sesticate trust in their hearsay database. That's why I complain about them. They're coercing information from third parties like the Department of Motor Vehicles. That's a third party, okay? So they're coercing when they access your information out of that DMV database. That's a third party. They're coercing information from a third party. Kangaroo court is a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding which a person's rights are totally disregarded and which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. There's all of them are kangaroo courts. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it. My private group at Facebook called Sovereignty International, I just don't go there. I haven't been, because I got to ban 17,000 people off my group, and I just don't even want to go there. So I don't, and I just stay away from it. My Yahoo private group is Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. My Google private group is Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International, and BitChute. I also have a profile there, but they limit the size of files I can upload, and so I don't have a lot of my videos there. No physical or moral coercion shall be exercised against protected persons, and in particular to obtain information from them or from third parties. Okay, so they go and access their database for the DMV. That's a third party, and they have no authority. See, that's coercing information from a third party. This could be used against the NSA, the CIA, Facebook, banksters, the pigs, compelling the disclosure of a Social Security number. It's also used against the pigs when they coerce information from you on the side of the road. They're coercing information about you from the DMV database. Article 32 of the Geneva Convention. The high contracting parties specifically agree that each of them is prohibited from taking any measure of such a character as to cause a physical suffering or extermination of protected persons in their hands. This prohibition applies not only to murder, torture, corporal punishment, mutilation, or by medical or scientific experiments not necessitated by the medical treatment of a protected person, but also to any other measures of brutality, whether applied by civilian or military agents. Okay, and so I just want to go to, I'm not sure if genocide is covered here, but I know that I've got an affidavit where I can, matter of fact, I wonder if, it's in here. Nope. Okay.
You do a search in the folder.
I've got it in here. I filed 2 or 3 criminal complaints against Jeff Sessions, and notice who's gone now.
I don't think you were the only one.
Probably not, you're right. Right here. This is 18 U.S.C. 1091. Basic offense, whether in time of peace or in time of war, with specific intent to destroy in whole or in substantial part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, subjects to the group to conditions of life that are intended to cause the physical destruction of the group in whole or in part. That sounds like calling you a sovereign citizen, taking reprisals against you, and that kind of stuff. Transfers by force children of the group to another group, okay, that means kidnapping children of a state citizen and forcing them into this federal citizen slave scam, okay. Transfers by force children of the group to another group, and so that's genocide too, okay. And so anybody who has problems with CPS, that is the issue that I would be bringing up. Now, the interesting thing is that it's almost word for word, for purposes of the statute, this is the Rome Statute, okay? Now, you have to understand that the United States has not acceded to the Rome Statute, which is the International Criminal Court. They always say, right up front, like President Trump even did it, he said that they're not going to accede to that because they don't want to give up jurisdiction to this foreign body, which I understand that, but it also means that they intend to engage in war crimes. Because if you read this Rome Statute, it's basically an expansion of the rights that are found in the Geneva Conventions, as well as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and it gives, they create a court and a prosecutor so they can basically go after people for war crimes. And so if you read in that Rome Statute, for purposes of this statute, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, religious group as such, deliberately inflicting on the group. And so it uses, and it probably has this paragraph 6 in there too, I'll bet you. But it uses the same, this Title 18, 1091 uses the same terminologies and ideas that are found in this Rome Statute anyway. So at least that part of it is okay.
Glenn,
But
the power of the war crimes was proven when George Bush Jr. could not go to certain countries or he would be arrested and jailed.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly, and he still can't go to certain countries because he's not president. When he was president, he had diplomatic immunity. But now that he's not president, he has to stay away from certain countries because he doesn't have that immunity anymore. Anyways.
Did you really send them 250 pages?
Sorry?
Did you really send them 250 pages for the stuff?
Was that 250 pages long?
That's what the document said.
Well, it was actually more than that.
I can't say I'm surprised.
And that was to Jeff Sessions?
That was, I filed a criminal complaint against Jeff Sessions, but it was over, if you read the thing, it was over, like I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times. And so it was over the courts masquerading as judges, okay? And so that's why the title of the document is, affidavit of criminal complaint and is bought and paid for, and clerks masquerading as judges. See right here? That's the name of the file, clerks masquerading as judges, right? And it was because of all these cases that got dismissed because I refused to pay their extortion, or various reasons. There was various reasons, but it was evidence that they intended to be bought and paid for a horse, selling their justice, and that's when shortly after doing that, I sent one of my nasty grams to the Secretary of Homeland Security, right? And remember I told you that it starts off. The very first paragraph says, we both know, or normally I say I accept your oath of office, but we both know you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, so fuck your oath, you fucking bitch. And that's where it started off, and it was like about 10 or 12 pages, and it talked about this stuff, it talked about the war crimes that they're engaged in and all that stuff. See what I'm saying? I can pull one up if you want to see it. But anyways, Homeland Security. Oh, it'll be under the Treasury Department. There we go. I think it's in here. Yeah. Let's see if this is it. Yeah, there it is. Kirsten M. Nielsen, I sent it to her by certified mail. Free too, by the way. You'll notice that I used to state that I accept your oath of office, but we both know you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, so fuck your oath, you communist, Satanist fucking bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. Anyway, so what happened was one of their Homeland Security pigs went and orchestrated a thing where they got me. The Lake Worth police arrested me and they had me in their jail. And so then they brought me in and he was talking to me about this thing. And so it was, see, what I did was I actually sent, this is the second one I sent. The first one I sent was, I think this is the first one. Yeah, the first one I sent was to her, see, and I copied in Donald Trump and a whole bunch of people, like a bunch of other people in the Homeland Security, and I copied them all in, right? And so the one that he showed me was this one, and so I knew it was the first one. So then I filed a criminal complaint against her, and next thing you know, Trump is coming out bad-mouthing her.
Yeah, she's gone now, right?
Yeah, and she's gone now. and so I think it had something to do with that, because I copied him in on this one, and then I filed a criminal complaint against her because her went and hired thug, her pig, went and came out and assaulted me and kidnapped me and falsely imprisoned me and et cetera, et cetera. You see what I'm saying? And I filed a criminal complaint and I sent a copy to Trump, and I sent it to Jeff Sessions too. And but I don't. I'm very careful not to make any threats. Okay, so I basically go through here and Kirsten Nielsen, I noticed that you or one of your coward pigs wants a piece of me. Just name a date, time, and location. I'll come armed, and we can settle it for once and for all. You Satanist fucking bitch. And then you'll notice that I already know that you cowards will never take me up on that, because you're cowards. You do your best to make sure I'm not armed, so I have no way to defend myself, and your pigs assault me, and your pigs operate in packs, and it's all with your approval and consent, and the approval and consent of your bought and paid for bar member judicial whores selling their justice. You Satanist fucking bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended. And then, anyways, I kind of, this one is 16 pages, right? So I kind of railed on it for 16 pages. And,
How much of that do you think she read before she was like, this guy?
well, I know that her subordinates read it.
That's right. Before she was like, man, this guy's got me pegged, huh?
Well, what this Homeland Security pig said to me, he says, so what do you think that made her feel like? I don't give a shit. I said, when I get a judge that wants to be a judge, then I'll stop. He said, are you going to stop? And I said, when I get a judge that wants to be a judge, then I'll stop and not before. And And he said, well, obviously you believe in what you're doing. And I said, not only yeah, but you know, I stood up to him and I told him the way it is. And you know, he was concerned that I was going to be a terrorist or something like that. And I says, absolutely not. I said, there's no threats in there. And I said, I told people have actually approached me and said they wanted to start up a militia. And I said, well, you just go ahead and knock yourself out, but I don't want really have anything to do with it because and there was people that have actually suggested that they might want to do something. And I said, don't be telling me about it because I'll turn you in. You know, and I would, because that's a breach of the peace. They got no business doing anything like that, and we need to operate within the law. You know what I mean? And we have a remedy by operating within the law. That's why I do these YouTube videos, because there is a remedy. You have a lot of corruption, there's no doubt about it, but there's remedies available, and ultimately we will get a remedy. You know, justice doesn't sleep. Well, it's justice. There's actually court cases that say that justice might sleep for a while, but it'll never go away. It'll always come back, and justice has to be done. And so there's court cases that talk about that too. And so I actually sent one of those letters to every member of the Supreme Court too, and I sent it to the clerks. I sent quite a few. I sent one to every member of the U.S. Senate, to every member of the U.S. House of Representatives. You know, there's a bunch of them that got one of those.
It was all sent to the paper terrorism department.
Whatever.
So you address them as cowards too?
Oh yeah. Well,
I was curious.
the first thing they want to do is disarm me, so I don't have the means to defend myself. And then they want to, they operate in packs. None of them will ever come to me man to man, face to face. You know what I mean? Never ever do that.
Always call backup.
They're always, absolutely. So they're cowards. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, I'd like to send something to my the mayor of my town, who also holds a Senate seat for New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
My wife I was at the Christmas parade in my town. My wife had stopped me from going up and approaching him because he was walking down the parade. And I just wanted to talk to the guy and yo, what's going on here? You know, what are you doing? Like, what? You know, this is you're for the people, but you know you're not. I don't understand. You know.
Yeah.
And I was gonna go rail on him a little bit,
The
and she was
mayor
like,
is responsible for the martial law. He's administrating the martial law.
and you know, I was gonna go rail on him a little bit, and she like stopped. No, don't do that. Don't.
Well, again, you got to decide what you're going to do and how far you're going to carry it. But I can tell you that's what I did, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend other people do that. You got to be careful, because if it's anything in there that might be considered a threat, you can have a problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the worst thing that I tell them is, if you or your pigs want a piece of me, you just name the date, time, and location. I'll come armed. We'll settle it for once and for all. And so, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And you know, because, and I tell them, normally I say I accept your oath of office, but we both know you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, so fuck your oath, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And you know, that's basically where I go with it. And the closest thing is if you or one of your pigs wants a piece of me, you just name a date, time, and location. I'll come armed. We'll settle it. And in the old days, that's why I say, in the old days, they wouldn't be doing any of this shit, because what happened with that cop last night would be happening all over the place. You see what I'm saying?
I know it will get very noisy.
It was, people had honor.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got a piece of me, you come and take it up with me. We'll settle it. One way or another, we'll settle it.
There's no honor no more. Oaths don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And remember, that's what Aristotle said. Okay, they teach cowardice, you know, and all the rest of it. That's exactly what's going on today. And Obama is a textbook example of a tyrant.
What about paycheck and pension?
Well, exactly.
Of course, we know most of them take a higher oath anyway.
Well, yeah, they're to Satan or to whoever they, you know.
To the lodge.
Yeah, the lodge. There you go. Anyways, okay, so let's just keep going here. This is Article 32 of the Geneva Convention. The high contracting parties specifically agree that each of them is prohibited from taking any measure of such a character as to cause the physical suffering or extermination of protected persons in their hands. The prohibition applies not only to murder, torture, corporal punishment, mutilation, or medical or scientific experiments not necessitated by medical treatment of a protected person, but all to any other measures of brutality, whether applied by civilian or military agents. Now, So this could apply for like chemtrails, fluoride in the water. It could apply for all sorts of stuff. Vaccinations, you know. And so you start bringing up the issue of war crimes. You know, you guys are doing war crimes. Terrorism is a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation. Can you spot the terrorists? I can see all sorts of them there. Terrorism is a noun, the use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political aims. This is International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 1, Clause 3. The state parties to the present covenant, including those having responsibility for the administration of non-self-governing and trust territories, shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination and shall respect that right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the UN. And so, you know, that sounds like occupied territory, right? Non-self-governing and trust territories. That's occupied territory for sure. Article 14, all persons shall be equal before the courts and tribunals in determination of any criminal charge against him or of his rights and obligations in a suit of law. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing by a competent, independent, impartial tribunal established by law. Well, you know, first of all, I think it was Tacitus that said that the more numerous the laws, the more corrupt the state. And so these bar members lay awake at night dreaming up all these codes and shit like that. And which is what we have. We have literally millions of codes, rules, and regulations. That's what you have. And so that shows how corrupt it is. And these bar members lay awake at night and
they
just
keep track, you know, like these
sorry?
cops. How they keep track of all this shit?
Well,
you know
no joke.
I mean? Like,
it has to be a full-time job almost. You know, I
shit.
mean, if I wasn't out of work for the last 6 years, I wouldn't be on top of it near as much as I am now. So
Right.
I guess they're doing me a favor by making sure I can't find any compensation for labor contracts because I got full time to be doing this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Although I make a little bit of money with this friend of mine at flea markets and stuff like that, but I certainly don't make the kind of money I used to make. You know, I used to make some months I'd make my best paycheck for a week was $7,800. And so that was all cash, no deductions. So, anyways, keep going. No sentence shall be pronounced by the competent courts of the occupying power except after a regular trial. There's no such thing as a regular trial. Okay? Remember, you go in there and challenge jurisdiction. Oh, I got jurisdiction. That's right. They just denied you due process. It's not a regular trial. He's bought and paid for it. See what I'm saying? And you're entitled to matter of fact, and it's not here. I sent out a lot of my notice in the mail.
Have you ever taken the opportunity to file a criminal complaint with the higher international courts yet against these people?
No, I haven't.
Because, you know, we can mention this all day long, but what effect does it have?
Right. Well, it's actually, there was something, I'm going to file a lawsuit in the, according to something that somebody sent in my group, and I need to get it. The district courts have original jurisdiction on all war crimes in foreign countries, and so that's where I was going to.
Cool. That answers the question.
Yeah. So I was going to bring an action.
Court.
Sorry.
So the district courts are the ones in
Right.
in the original,
So I'm gonna
original jurisdiction on
Right,
war
right here,
crimes.
paragraph 59.
Paragraph 15.
This is U.S. versus Griffith, U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. An employee of the United States is not qualified to serve as a member of a grand jury in any district.
States versus Griffith?
U.S. versus Griffith. It's 2 F2D 925. $1924. So that's what I tell them is that, and federal personnel is anybody with a Social Security number. So I don't want anybody on my jury that's got a Social Security number.
I can't read that. Oh, I can read it now.
2F2D 925.
1925.
that easier that way?
Well, that down further, you put the date down further.
Sorry?
I'll shepherdize that piece.
So the thing is that it's going to be hard for them to convene a jury. I mean, if they have a bunch of government employees, it's a kangaroo court. I put this in my notice and demands.
So it's that this does not actually, this does not address the district court have original jurisdiction, correct? Right. Right. So that has to come up at some, that's what, down the road.
Yeah, there was something on my group. I got to do a search for that when I get some time. When I get back to Texas, I'll probably look for that because
Because that would allow us to bring all of these into this world instead of going to Switzerland or other places.
Well,
right? The district court.
yeah,
You can name
if they're all bought, it's military commissioner. I'm going to rail on them when I go in there. I'll tell you right now. I'm going to rail on them.
Let us know when I'd like to show up.
Well, I just send file a lawsuit, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to tell them that I'm not taking your orders. You can put your orders up your rectal orifice. I don't have to follow your orders. That's a war crime. That's just evidence that you intend to engage in war crimes. If you're going to order me to do anything, you got to provide a remedy.
But isn't the penalty for war crimes potentially death?
It depends. I mean, the U.S. is in international agreements. There's no doubt about it. But if it's a war crime, the military, yes,
Right.
actually
Right,
potentially death.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to act. Just like their courts want to adjudicate sentencing on me or us. How do we get to the point, because there's a lot of talk about the war crimes they're doing, and it's provable, but where is the judgment against them? Where's the sentence?
I don't know. I mean, you have to look it up. I mean,
No,
do you
I'm
have
saying,
a sentence
how do we-
for anybody that's in any jail? You got to look it up. You got to find a case. You got to look it up. You got to go to the courts. It's all freely public information. Go look it up.
No, I'm asking who's the military tribunal against the war crime?
The district. There was
offenders?
something that was sent to me on a group that I remember seeing that said the district courts had original jurisdiction on all war crimes filed in foreign countries.
So we won't know till then.
What do you mean won't know till
We
then?
won't know how to act. So the district court would be the one that sentences.
That's where it will decide if there is a crime, and it will decide on what to do about it.
Perfect.
You know, that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Now, is that a state or federal? Forgive me for
That's federal district court.
federal district.
That was sent to me on my Yahoo group, and I know you're on my Yahoo group, so you got it too.
I will search it out and possibly.
Yeah, I know you got it. Matter of fact, if I have to, I'll send out something on. I'll say, who sent the thing out about the district court having original jurisdiction on war crimes, and
Let's get that
please send it again.
conversation going. That'd be great.
Yeah. But anyways, but the bottom line, right now, this issue with the jury is that you're entitled to not have government employees on your jury.
Which is almost everybody.
Well, they're going to be hard pressed to find someone without a social security number, or that's going to say I don't have a social security number. You see what I'm saying? Are you a government employee? Do you have a social security number? Yeah.
And chances are, if you know to say no to that, you also know the power of the jury.
Bingo. Okay, so it's a fundamental right of a party to have a neutral and detached judge preside over judicial proceedings. Check out my other videos: Banks Are Thieves playlist, Roman Cult playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 4, Do-It-Yourself How Not to Volunteer for the Selected Service in the Draft, Martial Law is Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 15, Canada Border Pigs playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections playlist. if the judge denies your challenge to jurisdiction without making the prosecutor prove jurisdiction, then it's a war crime in violation of Article 71 of the Geneva Convention. He's not neutral or unbiased. I would say so. We're doing war crimes here, are we? Either they have jurisdiction and can prove it, or the judge must dismiss the case. That's his only choice. That's it. He's got no other choice. If the record does not show upon its face the facts necessary to give jurisdiction, they will be presumed not to have existed. So you can challenge any case, past even, for void judgment. You can file it into any case because of the fact that they gotta show in the record that they have jurisdiction. And so then the argument is that I'm not a corporation, you know what I mean? It's a void judgment, they deny me due process, and so it's a nullity. Protected persons may in no circumstances renounce in part or in entirety the rights secured to them by the present convention. So you cannot agree to give up any of the rights that are in that Geneva Convention. That's why it's so powerful, because you cannot agree to waive those rights. That's why it's so powerful, and that's why I'm looking forward to bringing it. And I'm going to tell the court. I'm going to tell them when I'm going to not pay a filing fee, and I'm going to tell them you guys are involved in war crimes. You're coercing information from me. You're converting my right to get a remedy into a privilege with your regulations in violation of Article 52 of the Geneva Convention. You're coercing information from me in violation of Article 31 of the Geneva Convention, and I'll just make a list. And then you want to adjudicate whether there's war crimes here. You're the ones that are doing it.
So when they force you to get a CDL, would that kind of be like the same thing? Because if you need to get a license to provide for your family, isn't that converting your right
but
into
that's
a
commercial.
privilege?
That's commercial.
Okay.
That's a subject, okay? Because even under their own codes, you're carrying passengers or property for hire. That's clearly commercial. See what I'm saying? If you're carrying passengers or property for hire, you're going in. That's a contract.
And you're working for a corporation.
Well, whether you're working for a corporation or not, that shouldn't matter.
Well, they
Okay.
regulate corporations, so the corporations have a right to require you to be licensed and all that.
Well, that's true because the corporation's required. So yeah, if you're driving a company truck, then yes, and that's another reason. If it's your own truck, see, this is what some people do. Okay, is they own the truck and they buy the load at point A and take it to point B and sell it. And then they're traveling on the public highway with their private property. That's
Right.
completely different.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you're doing it for hire, then you're subject to regulation. But that's what some people do. I've heard of people in California, truck drivers, that they'll buy the load at point A
Yeah, I heard
and
the same.
take it to point B. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I heard people doing that too.
So you have to have an arrangement with someone so that you can do that, because not everybody can do that. You have to buy the load at point A and then take it to point B and sell the load.
So they're going down the road in a tractor trailer without tags on it?
Usually they put their own tags on it.
Okay.
I heard guys getting around like plowing income tax too. I was talking to an accountant about this stuff.
Right.
A guy in the family, extended family, and he was telling me about all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But see, it's different for me because I'm in construction, so I'm not. The company wants me to have a CDL. It's not that I'm actually operating. I'm usually like in a machine, an excavator, backhoe, something like that.
Right.
You know. But just in case, hey, jump in that tractor trailer, and
Right.
you know what I mean. So it's
Right.
like I don't want it, but I can't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, what I would suggest is come up with, see if they'll let you work as a contractor. And because that's the way I work. Okay, I work as a contractor. I work through American Engineering Services, and because those kinds of jobs are harder to find.
Yeah.
And and that's what are you going to do? But you got to, under the current regime. See, if you read the Constitution and the first acts of Congress, then what happened was it talks about government employees getting compensation for labor. Okay, they actually talked about that stuff. Okay, which means that they weren't involved in commerce. Okay, and it's only because of the martial law that now these government employees are, and income tax is really for government employees only. It's a kickback tax. They call it the kickback tax. See what I'm saying?
One way that I came up with that, and I haven't tested it, that you can do that, is the company hires the Social Security number entity, and so that's one entity. Then the man is doing the work under that, so you have the entity pay the man. That's not taxable, and then whatever's left over, the entity's got to file income tax return.
Well, speaking of that, there's a friend of mine in Texas that used to work for the post office. He's retired now. But they filed tax returns working for the post office, and what they did is, on the tax return, there's a place where you put down other expenses or something like that. And what he did was he figured, well, he says, this tax return is for the Roman cult Sesticate Trust, the Social Security number, and he said, so my time, I worked this many hours, and my hours are worth this amount of money, and so he went and put it under another expense, cost of labor or something like that. You see what I'm saying? And he put it all down, and it wound up being more than what, so it actually showed a loss, and he got all his taxes back.
See, so that proves what I came up with.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it'll work.
yeah.
And I'm
You're
almost
right.
sure,
You're right.
it'll work.
There's a
Because
guy
it's
that
two different entities.
there's a guy that did it that I know in Texas, and he worked for the post
I'll
office.
talk to you
Yeah,
about
I mean,
that.
the only reason why I had it
So
done
that's a
was-
government employee too.
I know, I heard that something similar to that, but then they sent him a letter saying it was frivolous.
Well, this I
I mean, I
trick you.
guess
They
I
trick you.
guess it depends how you do it, though.
No, they trick you with these letters. You have
Yeah.
to be careful reading what they're saying.
I know.
They're not talking to the man, they're talking to the entity.
And it's
Well,
in the contract too.
And
so.
another thing is that there's another guy that I know in Texas that what they will do for a corporation, they will send they'll let the IRS send them a tax return to fill out for the corporation, and then they'll send it back to the IRS and say, you sent us the wrong form. This is a non-domestic corporation. This corporation is domiciled in Fort Worth, Texas. It's non-domestic. Please send us the right form and we'll be happy to do it. And the IRS sends them back a letter saying, based on the information you provided, you don't have to file income tax.
Yeah. That must be Carrie.
No,
No?
it's some other people I know in Texas.
Okay.
See, that's the thing. Is there's, in Texas is like lots of, that's why I like Texas. Eh? Anyway.
How does this may apply to Mike's situation? This ticket, there's a checkbox for whether it was a Glenn, I want you to just take a quick peek. It says commercial. There's a place for the officer to check commercial license.
Right.
Why would that be? Like, is that bringing?
Well, that's just more evidence that it's commercial for sure.
We're already talking about actual CDL.
Yeah, well, a CDL is a commercial.
Yeah,
license.
But it's all
right.
commercial. That's just
They're all
another-
commercial, actually,
another
but
layer of the onion, that's
you know,
obfuscation.
payable
Probably
offense.
gives two, they have a regular driver's license and then a CDL, I mean, that's all commercial, it's like a.
Anyways, okay, so let's keep moving. We got to get moving so we can have lunch and then trial can get going here because it's 12:15 already.
Possible endorsement.
Warning: this is the army you were told not to tolerate. Evil order followers, the servants of evil, you assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiance to it means partaking of the evil. The good person will resist an evil system with his or her whole soul. Order followers are the ones that keep the system of slavery in place. When wars, when your government tells you who the enemies, revolutions, when you figure it out for yourself. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. These Roman cult Satanists are bending over backwards to make you think you have constitutional rights. It's extremely important to them that people do not figure this out, because the last time they were doing this, doing war crimes, it precipitated a war of revolution. If you challenge jurisdiction, the so-called judge is required to compel the prosecutor to prove jurisdiction or dismiss the case. If they do anything else, it's a denial of due process, which is a war crime. They're cowards. They're real brave when there's 20 or 30 of them, but when it's just you and them, they're cowards. They sneak around and fabricate evidence that you're the enemy and a subject. They're a slave, and they will never confront you without lots of their buddies to back them up. You're the enemy, and the sooner you figure that out, the better. You're a subject, and they're a slave, and the sooner you figure that out, the better. Patrick Henry coined the phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death," after witnessing a man flogged to death for taking a license. They're assaulting people with their Roman cult Statute trust. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. That's why I say they're nothing but thieves and pirates. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. The communists and the Southern Poverty Law Center are responsible for most of the stuff that's going on, because these code enforcers are gobbling up their propaganda. They're persecuting you for your political beliefs, which is a war crime. They're taking reprisals against you because you don't want to be their slave. They're pillaging your property. They're not respecting your religious beliefs. They're terrorizing you. They're threatening you. They're coercing information from you and from third parties. They're engaging in genocide against state citizens. And so there's the Sovereign Citizen Quick Reference Guide. And again, you guys got to remind me to send that to you. Or I think I've uploaded it to the group, but I'm not sure. But anyways, but it basically talks about initial indicators of sovereign citizen noticed by filings, presentation to the court of voluminous motions that contain references to UCC code, references to probate-type language, including estates, trusts, wills, beneficiaries, references to case law that's outdated, irrelevant, or taken out of context. So these code enforcers are supposed to determine all of this, eh? And so, and then signed documents, unusual nature, examples in all block capital letters with a colon in between, or with dots in between, authorized signature without prejudice. Yeah, they don't want you reserving your rights. Okay, so these people are just, don't get me going. Anyways, I got to keep going here. Remember, it's warfare. You have to treat it like it's warfare, because that is exactly what it is. Don't wait for them to attack you. Attack them first. Make a corporate denial affidavit. Serve them with a notice and demand that's designed to take away their presumptions. If you do it effectively, it will put them in a very difficult positions. If the pigs stop you, it's warfare. So we're doing war crimes today. Are we coercing? Are you coercing information from you? Are you taking reprisals against me? Begin building a case against them from the beginning. It is warfare. That's exactly what it is. Start right from the beginning and start building a case. In arriving at our decision in this matter, we do not depart in any way from our holding in Hendling versus Jensen that the doctrine of judicial immunity extends to courts of limited jurisdiction. But when a minor magistrate acts wholly without jurisdiction, civil liability attached for his malicious and corrupt abuse of process and his willful and malicious oppression of any person under the pretense of acting in his official capacity. And so, although probable cause may be inferred from malice, malice may be inferred from lack of probable cause. Okay? So when they don't have probable cause, by definition, it's a malicious prosecution. By definition. Lack of subject matter jurisdiction. If the court determines at any time that it lacks subject matter jurisdiction, the court must dismiss the action. So I think that that's probably the only thing that, in my cases, that when I challenged jurisdiction, they didn't dismiss it. And I think that probably the reason, because you have to tell them what their authority is to dismiss it. You see what I'm saying? And so, a public servant acting under cover of his office or employment commits an offense if he intentionally subjects another to mistreatment or arrest, detention, search, seizure, dispossession, assessment, or lien that he knows is unlawful, intentionally denies or impedes another in the exercise or enjoyment of any right, privilege, power, or immunity, knowing his conduct to be unlawful. For purposes of this section, a public servant acts under color of his office or employment if he acts or purports to an act in official capacity or takes advantage of such actual or purported capacity. So, gee, that sounds like what these judges are doing in their traffic courts. You see what I'm saying? That's official oppression. When they cannot issue a warrant for a Class C misdemeanor, and they do, then it falls under official oppression. You see what I'm saying? Because it's oppression. And so then that's under one. There's another one here: abuse of official capacity. A public servant with intent to obtain a benefit, to harm or defraud another, he intentionally or knowingly violates a law related to the public service, office, or employment, misuses government property or services, personnel, or anything of value belonging to the government that has come into the public servant's custody or possession by virtue of the public servant's office or employment. So if he's turning on his emergency lights when there's no emergency, that's misusing that equipment.
Waste.
That's right.
Waste is what it is.
Huh?
It's waste.
Well, it's not an emergency. He's misusing it. He wants you to stop based on this emergency or alleged emergency that doesn't exist because he wants to collect revenue. This is Texas Penal Code simulating a legal process. A person commits an offense if the person recklessly causes to be delivered to another any document that simulates a summons, complaint, judgment, or other court process with the intent to induce payment of a claim from another person or cause another to submit to the putative authority of the document or take any action or refrain from taking any action in response to the document. Well, that's these in Texas. I can tell you that I get all these letters all the time from these lawyers saying there's a warrant. You better go and but we'll settle it for you. So that's simulating a legal process. It's not a warrant. Conspired to commit, this is organized crime. Conspired to commit, engage in conduct that would conduct an offense or perform an overt act. Criminal street gang having a common identifying sign or symbol. Gee, that sounds like the police. Or an identifiable leadership who continually and regularly associate in the commission of criminal activities. That's the police. But anyways, the bottom line is there is good ones too. And so we have to understand that, and so that's why we need to educate our peace officers, and the best way to do it is to get their peers to educate them, and that's where the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association come in handy. This is Sheriff Brad Rogers. A sheriff can and should interpose for his citizens against an overreaching federal, state, or local government. And so, again, we need to educate them, and that's the last.